Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Artificial Intelligence Machine Learning series organized by Advancing Women in Product Boston chapter. My name is Anjali Munjal. I'm a product manager at Dell and as a volunteer as the head of programming with Boston chapter. Thank you to all the wonderful participants that have joined today. Today's episode is focused on artificial intelligence and machine learning at scale. And we are proud to have our distinguished speaker, Ritu Jyoti, with us. Before we start with this session, I would like to quickly go over the logistics and agenda for today. We'll start with the short overview of Advancing Women in Product, followed by the main session presented by Ritu Jyoti, and then we'll have the question and answer session towards the end, moderated by Jairia, who is also a core member of Boston AWIP chapter team. So from a quick overview of the AWIP, so our mission is as a nonprofit organization that empowers women and other minorities to advance to the highest level of technical leadership. We were founded in 2017, and today we have a strong membership of more than 12,700 people across the globe. Our vision is to continuously have pathway problems solved for the women that are underrepresented by the groups by facilitating equal access to skill-based workshops and executive membership. We have different chapters all over the world, including locations such as San Francisco, Boston, Seattle, New York, India, and Paris. And if you have not yet joined us or registered as with our Advancing Women in Product, I'll strongly urge you to join us at www.advancingwomeninproduct.org. A quick introduction for our speaker for today. We have Ritu Jyoti, who is currently a Program Vice President for Artificial Intelligence Strategies with IDC Software Market Research and Advisory Practice. Prior to IDC, she was a Chief Product Officer at Keminario. She has over 2 decades of experience in high tech, and she is a trusted advisor to some of the world's largest technical firms as well as end users. Ritu has an educational degree in corporate strategy and strategic marketing from MIT Sloan School of Management and has been a frequent speaker and moderator at many industry-leading conferences and media outlets, including, but not limited to, the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, and more. So without further ado, I would like Ritu Jyoti to talk about the AI ML at scale.
Thank you, Anjali. I hope everyone can hear me. So I'm just going to pass on to my sharing my screen. Thanks, Anjali, once again, and hello, everyone. It's my great pleasure and privilege to be presenting to you folks today. As Anjali mentioned, I'm currently an employee of IDC. I'm the Global AI Research Lead for IDC, and I've been with IDC for over 3 years, and not a newbie to the industry, very long time, for over 25 years. And for the majority of my career, I have been actually a practitioner, and I've had the privilege to work across the technology stack, hardware, software, and services. And I have had the privilege to work for incumbents like IBM, EMC, PricewaterhouseCoopers Consulting, and others. And just before I joined IDC, I was the Chief Product Officer of a high-tech startup. And today we will have about 40 minutes. I'll do the presentation, and at the end of the session, we'll have a very good understanding of where AI ML deployments are there in enterprises today, and what do the technology buyers and suppliers need to do to thrive in the AI and digital era. So if you look at today at the enterprise software stack, AI is almost everywhere. After decades of experiencing a slow burn, AI innovation has really caught the fire to become the hottest item on the agenda of today's top technology firms. So if you think about whether it is customer experience, it's rapidly evolving, to be the new brand. So, today enterprise software stack, AI is almost everywhere. And we're all kind of, watching this industry very closely, and you will see that after decades of experiencing a very slow burn, AI ML is not new. It's been there for the last 50 years, 60 years. Today, it is kind of touching customer experience, which is it's evolving. Today customer experience is rapidly evolving to be the new brand, And contact center AI solutions are being built to provide, 24/7 customer support and self-service in a very natural way, in a conversational way. You have the option of actually using chatbots, whether it is a text bot or a voice bot, or these solutions are also empowering the human agents with contextual guidance and transform businesses. It's also being broadly used to build digital personal assistants. Like, you and I, we all work for some company. And if we want to kind of look into what's my schedule looks like, if I have to look for what's my number of leave balances, I can actually go through all of that using some digital personal assistants. Similarly, if you look into today, it is, I'm sure many of us must have visited one of those Amazon Go frictionless checkout stores. AI is being used there. Retailers are building AI apps for automated shelf replenishment or frictionless checkout. You're using your mobile app, you're checking into the stores, the sensors are being used to figure out all the stuff that you have picked up out, understanding the different, choices as well, that, what you're making, what you're picking up, which you're dropping off. And finally, you walk out of the store without doing any other interaction, just check out of the store, and it's all managed by AI. There's been a lot of discussions about it being used in the advanced driver assistance systems, AI applications to, identify dangerous situations that you're being confronted into by monitoring dozens of sensors that are built in the car and the surrounding environments. In the driver assist mode, it can be used to alert the driver or take emergency control of the vehicle to avoid an accident. Similarly, if you're a marketing professional, then you know that it is being used for building recommendation engines. There are lots of advancements in reinforcement learning algorithms, and that is being used to provide tailored product recommendations to boost engagement, conversion, based upon where the engagement is in the sales cycle, win probability, and best practices learned from across other opportunities. The list is endless, and I'll walk you through a couple more here. It is being used to even diagnose all these social media interactions, all that we talk about the particular, product or our reactions. And that is being used to kind of, advancements in natural language processing, helps you do the text analysis and provide sentiment, information from websites, social media, chatbots, and dialogue agents for customer support, and even analyze the tone for it. Similarly, if you go, a lot of digital businesses with high risk exposure are adopting AI-based online fraud analysis and detection platforms. Some of you who watch, the IT stack and work with, some of the leading database companies in some fashion, you must have noticed that the entire IT operations is being automated, and some of the first leading vendors, they also announced autonomous databases where self-driving, databases are being done for fast query performance. It does not need sophisticated database administration. All the repetitive manual tasks can be automated. Not to say that the database administrator job can be completely eliminated. It's more about augmenting the human intelligence in these areas. And last example that I had here, and not the least, is about genomic analysis. It is how it is being used, and we all know that AI has huge potential in the diagnosis and treatment of diseases, even looking at the intersection of the diverse data sets, including medical records, lab tests, clinical studies, medical images. And we all know that it's humanly impossible sometimes for the radiologist or the doctors to actually get so much insights at the speed, at the level of introspection that is needed, and also leverage insights from a vast set of other use cases and experiences will be very, very valuable. So one may think that where are we with AI? There's been a lot of conversation, and are we anywhere close to kind of, the hype in the industry? So 2 years back, I remember I was speaking at a conference in Florida, and a lot of enterprise customers would walk down and ask me, is this real, or is this just like the Siris or the Cortanas of the world or the Alexas, or is it something beyond that? I have a little bit of a fun trivia here for us is that, today the AI is very, very good in pattern recognition. And we are into the very, very narrow form of AI today. We refer to AI very broadly, but if you see here, there are 3 different forms of AI, which is the artificial narrow intelligence, the general intelligence, and the singularity. So narrow intelligence is basically when, focuses primarily on one single narrow task with a limited range of abilities. If you think of an example of an AI that exists in our lives today, they're all ANI. This is the time that is like, whether it is using in a natural language in Siri, they're all ANI. And AGI would be on the level of a human mind. There's a huge, huge debate whether even 2030 is possible, because today, AI has the intelligence which is almost that of an ant or lesser than even a bird. So it's way, way lower than even human beings, children. So we are into the AGI. So I have my sincere doubts if 2030 is even possible. That's some folks believe in that. And the other area is that singularity. So that is when AI will take over human intelligence, and that's a very scary thing. It only happens in very, movies and stuff. But anyways, jokes apart on that, I'd like to, share one of my favorite quotes on AI on this space. I visualize, it's by Claude Shannon. He's the American mathematician, electrical engineer, and father of information theory. And he said, and I'm going to repeat it, I visualize a time when we will be to robots what dogs are to humans, and I'm rooting for the machines. I'll repeat it. I visualize a time when we will be to robots what dogs are to humans, and I'm rooting for the machines. I hope by 2050, some of us may or may not be there around, but if it happens, that will be, very, very interesting. So with that, basically the first few slides, I was trying to set the stage that, it has gone above and beyond the consumer stage. It has come, and it is very, very actively involved in the enterprises today. Even though we are still in the narrow and the weak form of intelligence, we are nowhere close to even general intelligence. A lot of, large companies, big companies are working. But the meta point in this section that I'd like to, share with you is that it is real. It is really happening in the enterprises. And I'll walk you through a lot of examples as to how it is being used and realized, apart from the examples that I just walked you through, how it is actually delivering value in enterprises today. So the next section here is about, how are the businesses seeing business impact today? So in this slide, if you see here, we basically conducted a joint study with Microsoft. Our Asia Pacific team at IDC conducted a very intelligent study, and they actually looked into all the business drivers and KPIs that are being used to make an impact in enterprises. And they asked the early adopters that, what kind of benefits and what kind of results are you seeing today? And what do you expect in the next 3 years? And very interesting that, most of them were almost seeing somewhere between 18 to 26% of changes even today, whether it is better customer engagement or whether it was higher competitiveness or accelerated innovation. And they were all kind of looking forward to almost 2x the rate of improvement in all these metrics in the next 3 years. And I would like to stress again that this is all about intelligence, human augmentation. And we have done a lot of research. I'm not going to go into those details. If anyone is interested, please feel free to reach out to me. But the stage that we see today and in the foreseeable future is human augmentation for the majority of the enterprise use cases. So with that, I'm going to share with you some stats, as you know, IDC, and I do want to call that out that we will be sharing these slides with you, but you guys cannot use it for any external purposes without seeking IDC's approval. So there are some rules around it, but again, for the interest of sharing some high-level details. This is a little bit outdated information. We are going to publish a new one in the very near future, but this gives you a good sense that, the top use cases by 5-year CAGR, these are not the largest use cases today, but these are some of the fastest growing use cases. The overall AI spending, we had predicted that it will reach about 97.9 billion, and this is across the stack. And banking, retail, and manufacturing will approach almost close to half of the global spend. So if you look into the use cases here, some of the most interesting use cases which are going fastest in the enterprises, one is that the automated human resources, the end-to-end life cycle of an employee within a company, right from hiring of the employee to actually the reward and management, engagement, employee education. That is one of the very, very rapidly evolving use case. The second use case, which is very critical, is the IT automation. So you all must have heard a lot of, announcements from the biggest technology suppliers these days about AI ops. And AI ops, interestingly, is not the term about operationalizing AI, but it's more about operationalizing IT using AI. So that is great. And I gave you an example of autonomous database in the last few slides, but that will continue to grow. Accelerated by COVID, you'll see a lot of emphasis on the intelligent process automation. And the last thing that I want to talk to you here is about the, example of digital twins. There are a lot of scenarios in which you cannot really do it on your own, sitting remotely, and you could do this advanced digital simulation. There are very interesting use cases in the field of manufacturing, and even in the case of construction, and in cases of healthcare. And so we'll see a lot of, advancements in that space as well. So this is a question that I kind of constantly be asked, and IDC is known for its MaturityScape. This is basically a framework where we actually survey the broad set of, enterprises in the industry and come back and assess them, that where they are in their maturity and what they can do, what concrete actions and steps that they can take to, evolve. Because today, in order to be relevant, the businesses have to embrace AI. It's not a choice, it's not an option. And in order for them to figure out that, how do I kind of, advance in the cycle, because the farther, you're on the right-hand side, the better, business outcomes you could realize. So we have a MaturityScape, and if you see here, there are 5 stages in which we classify the enterprises. So I will not go into each and very definition in great details, but it's kind of, a no-brainer. You can see it from here, that on the left-hand side, they're basically the laggards. They're kind of, don't really know what they have to do, how they have to do. They don't know where to get started. Majority of the organizations, this is a US-based survey, they're in the second stage, which is the opportunistic, and it is not surprising. These are people who know that they have to use AI. They actually, they're using it for some isolated projects. They're challenged with data readiness. They don't know how to govern. Skills management is an issue. Technology selection, they are one-off and limited to just, specific initiatives. And on the very end, on the right-hand side, is the disruptor who has the optimized, who has figured it out all in terms of how do they create the business strategy aligned to their business goals. AI usage without taking a hard look into your business processes or your business models is a waste of time. You really have to take a hard look, just taking your legacy processes and kind of automating it or using AI will not be the best results that you want to kind of, embrace. So, these companies who are the disruptors, they're using it in the most constructive fashion, in the most eligible, meaningful way to make the difference, to have the competitive advantage. If someone is interested, please reach out to me for more details. But behind the scenes, under the hood here, we actually measure each of these companies under 5 different dimensions. There are 5, stages, but there are 5 different dimensions, which is the ad hoc, the vision, the people, the process, the technology, and data readiness. So these organizations, starting with a vision, what do you want to do? What is your overarching strategy? Many of us who've been in the industry for a long time know that using data warehousing initiatives, those old, initiatives, which was like a total, money and a time sink, we don't need to repeat those kind of mistakes. Lessons learned from those past experiences. So how do you kind of figure out that, how do you use it and, focus on the right initiatives with the right ROI, start maybe with the smaller, the initiatives which have the tangible ROI, small, crawl, walk and run, embrace newer business models and all. Similarly, how do you kind of structure your organization? What are the skills needed? What kind of processes that you need to kind of come together? How do you decide on your technology architecture? And last but not the least, the data readiness. So those are the 5 under the hood dimensions that we measure these companies around. So IDC actually has predicted that, and the reason that I was saying that, it's not a choice and, businesses have to get into this area is that enterprise economies today and the nature of competition have changed. Today, the leading companies are pursuing economies of intelligence. And what we are looking at and predicting here is that by 2025, AI-powered enterprises will see 100% increase in knowledge worker productivity. And what we mean by that is that they will have, the ability to, basically the enterprises will become AI powered, and these disruptive companies will have the ability to synthesize information. That means they use AI to convert data into information and then into knowledge. They'll have the capacity to learn. So they will use AI to understand relationships between knowledge and apply the learning to business problems. And they will have the ability, a capability to deliver insights at scale. So they will use, to support decisions and automation. So based on this, all these companies who will have all these capabilities and do this in the right fashion, they will have shorter reaction times. So they will have the ability to respond to any kind of a situation in half the response time of the peers who have not embraced AI. They will have greater product innovation success. They'll have almost 25% increase in rate because of embracing all these areas, and then also have improved customer satisfaction. So that's what we are kind of, looking into from why businesses need to do this and how do they need to do it. So in this section, I kind of covered that what are the tangible business outcomes that businesses are seeing, what we are predicting, and what really is the market, what are the most important industry use cases that we are seeing in the enterprises. The next section is that, where do we see, apart from the MaturityScape that I just covered, where do we see the businesses are, in terms of their pilots, in terms of their deployments, in terms of their, the challenges. So let me walk you through some of the recent, research that I just conducted in earlier this year in March 2020. I hadn't planned it for COVID, but it just happened that it actually ran during the COVID, situation. And if you see here, the current reality of AI deployments is grim. It's extremely time-taking, cost-intensive, and only 27% of the initiatives are in production today. Majority of them are in pilot or early stages of development. And, a significant part has also failed. But I do want to share one interesting insight, because when I ran this survey last year, the numbers were way, way worse. So on a positive note, the adoption definitely is on the rise. If I remember off the top of my head, I think last year, the number of initiatives that were in production was almost like 13 to 14%. And this year it's almost like, 27%. So that's a positive thing. So you may think that, what are the reasons why AI adoption is the rise? The reasons are manifold. Sometimes it is lack of skilled staff. Sometimes it is unrealistic expectation. Sometimes people really don't know. They are in this analysis paralysis. And there is a whole bunch of, lack of a strategy, lack of top-down culture. Sometimes it's not just technology, it's a combination of other factors. And I cannot stress enough that how important the culture and the corporate embracement of AI and linking this to their corporate strategy is so critical for the success. The reason I'm mentioning about culture here is that, there are different strata of people, and, there are certain people who are more risk averse. There are certain people who are more cautious. They're in different stages of their career. And for a company to come together, when the company embraces the culture of innovation and let people, try different things and fail, and people are not going to be penalized for that, I think it kind of builds out that whole area of innovation and area of thriving. So that is very, very important. Then what would be the top factors that are holding deployments today? Some of them, we all kind of know it, but it is important for me to kind of just walk it through. Today, more than 50% of the time is spent on data preparation and deployment, whereas the data scientists and the data architects and the business analysts, they should be actually spending time in the actual business problem solving and building the algorithms that we actually can deploy and realize superior business outcomes. So we all know data is foundational to AI. So having an AI-ready data architecture, when you're dealing with this kind of volume of data, and also a very diverse, in the past when we were working in most of the data related projects, it was one type of data, or it was mainly, batch processing of certain data. Business analytics in the past is always about doing, insights into the past. But today, AI is kind of rapidly changing that and doing things in real time. It's more, predictive and prescriptive. So you cannot have the bandwidth, nor the skill set, or the time and the luxury to have, so much of effort being spent on data preparation. But also, we all know deep learning is very, very data heavy. It needs, lots and lots of availability of labeled data. There are advancements in algorithms that will also help alleviate these situations, where you can use on-the-fly dynamic learning. You could, do more of unsupervised, or, there's some advancements happening in the neurosymbolic AI area, which can help. But, that is a big, big problem today. The other area is that, of course, the skill data science personnel. So, the auto ML, and we'll talk about a couple of those examples here. There's efforts in the field of automated feature engineering and how you can help in, interpretability of these algorithms. Those are also happening. So as we speak, so rapid changes. The last is a very, very big pet peeve of the end users, is about the cost of the solutions and the decision criteria. So what do I mean by that? We all know that some of the, especially the deep learning, they're very resource intensive. Sometimes these training can run for hours and days and weeks, and it can fail. And again, you'll have to redo that. There's lack of optimization, there's lack of interoperability. So all of that needs to be taken care of. And I'll walk through some of the suggestions and advice that we have for both the technology suppliers and the end users in this space. But before I move on, I do want to call out one very, very important thing here. And this is really, really fundamental to kind of scaling AI, is that trustworthy AI is becoming so much more important than the accuracy of the models. In fact, in the survey, we had asked that, how businesses are getting serious about it. They are putting some formalized framework. They have senior management supervision around it. So we have identified there are 5 foundational elements of trust, because until and unless somebody trusts, nobody is going to sit and kind of adopt it. So it's a chicken and egg situation. But apart from that, even otherwise, there is some amount of importance on trust because of the life cycle management, for your regulation, for your compatibility, your compliance reasons as well. So I'll give you just a flavor of, in the interest of time, I'll just keep it high level here, but there are 5 elements of trust that we talk about. One is fairness, that, has the algorithm made the decisions, use the data, which is free of bias. There's rapid advancements in tools that is happening. But again, I do not want to kind of, make it sound simple. It's a very complicated area. How do you eliminate data biases? How do you eliminate, bias kind of, escalation or enhancement by using some wrong sets of algorithms? It can be actually made worse. So we basically looking into that, how can we, make sure that it is not amplified. Suppose, there is an Equal Opportunity Act, you discriminate against an employee for hiring, or an Equal Pay Act. How do you make sure that the systems they're using train data and models that are free of bias, and there's no prejudice of labels? So establishing tests for training, identifying, curating, all that is very important. And both large technology suppliers as well as the startups are working in this area. But again, a lot more work needs to be done. The second area that we talk about is explainability and, interpretability. So a lot of times people kind of use them one versus the other or interchangeably. I would say that there are nuances to it, but in the focus of this presentation, I'll just keep it high level. Basically, people want to understand that how AI models have, come to a specific decision. And different stakeholders will require different explanations for different purposes of objectives. For example, if there is an end user, a physician might need insights and justification as to why a treatment was recommended, or an affected user loan applicant would need understanding of the factors that led to his loan denial, but not just that why the loan was denied, but also what he or she could do to get it approved. A compliance officer must need to know that, there was no discrimination to its constituents. System builders, government would need to know that, their systems are performing well at a higher level. So the meta point here is that one size does not fit all, and explainability is very, very important. I'll keep going and give you some high level flavor of the other elements, which is robustness. That the systems that are used to actually build these models and deploy these models, they should not be vulnerable to tampering or compromising the data. And the reason I'm sharing this is all because, you as product managers, you as product professionals, need to make sure that, the checks are done and the right balances are put in place for all these elements of trust. Similarly, there needs to be security and safety, in terms of privacy and confidentiality of the individuals. No unintended harm should be done by, these models. From a compliance reasons, lineage, there is need to know that, because, this is not a simple application, there is a data dependency, there's a timestamp of the data that was used. So you really need to make sure that given a situation, you have the ability to provide auditing throughout the life cycle. Which data, which model, stamp, which version of that, which metadata artifacts were used, and it is needed to establish the whole lineage of the model. And last but not the least, the transparency, that we all buy, food, and we all see nutrition label at the back, which tells us that these are the nutrients, these are the, stuff that went into making that product. Similarly, for each one of these models that was deployed into an application, we need to understand that, what went into it, what data set was used, what bias method policies were used for checking, bias checking methods were used, any bias mitigation was performed, was the service checked against robustness, and the list goes on. I can speak on this topic for 2 hours, but in the interest of time, let's keep going here. This is so. Before I come, close the session with some tangible guidance as to what really the both the technology suppliers and buyers need to do. Let me walk you through, while there are challenges, while there are certain inhibitors, there's some very, very appealing trailblazers who have used it in a very, very nice fashion. And I'll walk you through 3 examples. One example is conversational AI example. The second one is a computer vision example. And the third is a prediction engine. So the first one, here is the example of, Honeywell, which actually they have been working, and they have, already deployed some parts of it, working with a partner to create an HR digital assistant, which can, for their global employee base, and the aim is to, be the preferred method to get all your questions answered, and access to policies, amazing end-to-end approach for completing transactions. And they've said that, they wanted their HR digital assistant to be available where employees spend most of the time. So did the integration with Teams, Microsoft Teams collaboration. And they really want, the employees to have this, what Jarvis is to Iron Man. But the broader aspect is that, today, I mentioned at the start in one of the use cases that automated human resources, taking care of employee experiences as important customer experience because they have a direct linkage to it. So hats off to them for doing this. The other example of computer vision is of Coca-Cola, and Coca-Cola is using it in a very, very interesting way. There are, they use it for all their social media interactions. They use natural language processing to diagnose them, analyze that, and even take corrective actions on that. They have also used it to figure out if some new product has to be launched. They can test it out, in social interactions and make those decisions. But the one that really caught my attention, which is very, very simple, which is a combination of, using, we all, they get a 10-letter, tag at the bottom for all those folks who are, for the loyalty reward program. And it was a nightmare for people to enter those code. And a lot of people did not enter. So by using computer vision, they could actually just have the people scan it, verify that 4-digit product code, and image recognition technology is used to allow purchases to be verified and build on their loyalty rewards program. They're also making a lot of their new product decisions. And in some parts in Asia Pac, in Japan and all, they're also, dynamically changing depending on the weather and all, and the mood, the flavoring of their, offering. So very, very neat and very interesting. And the last but not the least is American Express, which is using, this is an example of a prediction engine where they're actually using, machine learning algorithms to kind of go through and do, fraudulent transactions, blocking the fraudulent transactions. So while that is very important, but think about the other positive impact on the business, because if you're blocking it at the first place, you're actually also saving on less remedial action and less, follow-ups and unnecessary costs in that area. And this has really helped them big time in improvement in security. And they're also using it for their AI-driven personal assistant called Misi, which makes recommendation, uses machine learning. So you see that while there is, it's in early stages, but some of the trailblazers, they would fall in our AI disruptor category in the AI maturity scale that I just walked you through. And they're really, really seeing, good tractions there. So as a, as a, product person, why this is so important and what really needs to do. So just a little bit of a technical context here that, when you do the training, you're using the training data set, you're going through a couple of iterations, you're coming up with, the right set of, trained model or a new capability. And then it has to be kind of closely tied to the inferencing, because that's when it is applied to a business use case. So they do not really, in machine learning training and inference, they do not exist in isolation. There's always a cycle that connects them. So suppose the models generated by machine learning, they're sent to inference, and eventually the experience of the live data must be used to further optimize the business case, because you trained on some set of data, but when it's actually run into the real live environment, you will see that the data might have changed. There's a data drift, there's a concept drift, and the tighter the the execution between the two, the better the business loop will be, but also that the quicker the business can respond to changing circumstances is very, very important. For example, by quickly learning a user's immediate shopping pattern and correlating it to notable events of the day, a business can generate better shopping recommendations. So you see how important it is to tie these connections really, really fast. So as I was just saying here that, how can businesses get a competitive edge? They have to adopt machine learning, deep learning faster at scale. And how do you get it to scale? They need to have a tighter execution, right from their building, training, tuning, to deployment, and finally doing deploy in the production monitoring. They need to close the business loop. So it's not all about just building a really, really cool, fancy machine learning model, but it's also connecting it to the business case. And that's how you really, really need to kind of, help businesses accelerate that. And the whole life cycle is extremely important. So with that, I'm going to quickly walk you through. I built through because we are running out of time here, but this is basically businesses need to embrace ML ops. So what is ML ops? ML ops is basically the compound of machine learning, development, and operations. It is similar to DevOps. It's a concept. It's not one single product or tool. It is a practice of collaboration between data scientists, data architects, business analysts, and IT operations professionals to help manage production machine life cycle. And we kind of really see this as that, it's going to be powered by tools and technologies from, right from experimentation to production and in an ongoing cycle. And there's a lot of, advancements happening in that. I just published a paper on ML ops. And if someone is interested, reach out, we can walk through more details. But essentially you see that a lot of emphasis was originally when people were starting, they were focused on the data acquisition. How do you kind of get a common data integration platform? But then, whether it is the big incumbents who are offering solutions in the model training and model development, or, now what is really needed and the most of the rapid advancements that is happening is on the right-hand side, which is on the development and operations, on monitoring. How do you register all so many thousands and thousands of models? How do you bring together from the one isolated Jupyter notebooks in which the data scientists are working to one common consolidated enterprise level, model registry? How do you validate them in a consistent fashion? How do you deploy and monitor it? And then, if there is a data drift or a concept drift that is happening because the data has changed or your business requirements has changed, how do you quickly, a COVID-19 situation happened, how do you kind of quickly adjust to those dynamic environments? So that whole tool chain is rapidly evolving. Very, very interesting developments in this area that is happening. But again, it's very much in its early stages right now, and we will be keeping a close watch to it. Things like if our organizations, and this has to integrate with the existing DevOps mechanism. So suppose if someone is already using, DevOps tool chains like source code repositories like Git, or automation facilities like Jenkins, or orchestrators like Airflow, how do you actually integrate with the existing? Enterprises are not looking for rip and replace, but they're looking for integration with the existing tools, and also to their business focus, how they can reduce all the risks, right? There's a huge amount of concern around some unmitigated risks that can happen. There could be a damage to a brand reputation. They could lead to some kind of, kind of foreseen legal backlash or impact on customer satisfaction. So all this, the whole business KPIs and governance is very, very critical today. So with that, so how can the technology suppliers and you folks who are actually, perhaps most of my attendees today are actually from the supplier side, and the role of a product management, what tools and technologies do you folks need to provide to help businesses achieve this? And so the first one is this, auto and augment. I'm sure you all have heard this term a lot, auto ML, auto AI, and all that stuff. I actually would like to say that it's not just about automation, it's about augmentation. So I like to kind of coin the phrase auto augment. And then, whether you automate the whole data management processes, whether it is an autonomous database, you're automating the data quality, the data, preparation by either helping with feature engineering. We don't have time to kind of go through a lot of examples here, but let's say you're a bank developing a predictive model for whether to provide a small business with a credit line or a loan. And you may only have on hand the business name and a history of bank transactions. So by this, you could have access to features such as transaction slope per month, largest payment per quarter, or, standard deviation of revenue per week. But, if you get additional data sources from outside the bank, that would open a world of potential features that may improve the predictive model that you're developing. For example, the foot traffic figures or the company's publicly available online activity, such as the number of tweets, date of next renewal. And I said that, a significant amount of time is spent on data preparation, so, and feature engineering. So the more sophistication happens in feature engineering, the lesser cost will be in the hyperparameter tuning. So they are interrelated, and it's very, very important for businesses and technology suppliers to help the technology buyers in this area. The second area is that today we know that AI and ML will run from edge to core to cloud, and how do you support and give the customers the ability to run it where the data has gravity, keep it there, and embrace the open frameworks, and how do you embrace, give the end users the capability to support custom containers, or whether it is different types of frameworks. What people tell us that I built my model on say TensorFlow, and tomorrow I want to deploy it in some other, scenario, or I have certain models built using some PyTorch, and how do I kind of use them or deploy them in different setups? So all this interoperability, I'm sure you must have heard about the ONX framework. All that is really, really critical. So work is happening, but a lot more needs to be done in this space. And the third and the last area that customers really need to focus on, need help, is with auto-govern. Really, customers don't really have the ability to sit and manage this. If they have to be competitive, if they have to realize business at AI ML at scale, they need tools to do this auto governance. And there are some very interesting tools, but it's a very infancy market right now. And for all these foundational elements of trust, and also help with, sometimes, you may have a human in the loop to kind of, make the right decision, but put some thresholds, help define the business KPIs with the right governance architecture, and automatically help with that, alert them if there's a data drift or a concept drift. In some cases, it might not be fully automated, but give them the tools to do that. So in closing, AI spending is actually, as I said, it will reach almost like 97.9 billion by 2023. Banking, retail, and manufacturing will be a significant part of it. This is, a source of our spending guide. And AI is actually everywhere. And if you watch all the trends that is happening during COVID, the businesses, the digital, we call them as digitally determined. The folks who are digitally determined, who are already in this path, they are in a much better way as positioned to kind of be resilient, to take care of this crisis, be resilient, and be on their path of growth, and kind of, really, really realize the superior business outcomes. So what we are conveying the message is that AI is not a choice. AI is changing the future while disrupting the present. And how the suppliers supply, or how your competitors compete, how your customers buy, everything is changed. AI is integral for their company's ability to thrive, and the technology buyers and the suppliers, they have to cooperate and help each other by transforming across every stages of maturity and cycle. So even the suppliers have to embrace AI. If they have to be successful and help their buyers, they need to embrace AI across their tech stack, across their business operations, across their financial operations, across their IT operations. The meta point here again is that always, this is my message even to the end users, but evaluate, build versus buy. There's no point in actually reinventing the wheel that is already there. So if there is a Vision API available and it's a commodity and there's no uniqueness in what you need, there's no need for you to reinvent. Just build your partnership, ecosystem partnership. Look for providing value where there is a gap. And this debate has been going on for so many years now that, whether AI ML will be embedded across the stack. And I started my first slide on that. Look for embedding, look for automation, providing intelligent solutions across the stack, across the operations as much as you can. So go with that mindset, go with that. So I'll close by saying that, in 2011, Mark Anderson had said, software is eating the world, and the folks gushed and did not understand what he actually meant. And if you look at 2009 to 2019 was all about software. Today, with rapid advances in AI, 2019 to 2030 will be all AI, and we would be happy to kind of say that AI is truly eating the software today. Businesses and whether it is the buyer or the suppliers, they're all looking into this AI first culture. They need to kind of make sure that they have the right data set, they have the right AI data architecture. They need to know how are they going to go about their build versus buy and of AI capabilities. And we focus a lot in this area of research. I be happy to kind of help any of you if you have any further questions in this area. But with that, I think we are close to the top of the 40 minutes here, and I'll pass it on to Anjali and Yagira for opening up the Q&A session.
Hi, everyone. Ritu, thank you so much for this talk. Definitely very interesting. I have a few questions from the audience. So the audience has been very engaged, and there have been a lot of comments about how much they enjoyed the talk. So I just wanted to pass that on to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to start. Yeah, so we talked about machine learning operations, and you at the beginning of the talk you made a comment on AI operations not being the same as operationalizing AI, but maybe more of how IT is using AI. So I wanted to see if you could elaborate more on that and how that ties back into the ML operations flow that you showed in your slide.
Yeah. So if you think about it, ML ops, if you look from a broader perspective, machine learning is a subset of AI, and deep learning is a subset of machine learning. Machine learning ops is the term that we are using, which actually has the subsets of data ops, the model ops, and the whole AI IT ops, for lack, the whole deployment ops, right? But thanks to some of our competitors, my company competitors, there was a point in time when somebody coined this term AI ops for using AI for using it for IT automation. So how do you do self-serving, self-healing databases, or infrastructure or network? So it is the AI ops term is actually using AI and ML technologies to automate those tasks of a database administrator or a system administrator or a network administrator. Whereas machine learning ops that I'm talking about here is that how do you operationalize the building of the AI ML models from experimentation to the actual deployment? So that's the nuances, the difference.
No, great, thank you. Yeah, and that includes, from getting the data, cleaning the data, training, and deployment and monitoring. Yeah, so basically, what are your thoughts on tools available to have better success of getting AI into production? And what do you think are the gaps in the tools that are available?
Yeah, so just think about it, the data platforms today. I'll just start from the left-hand side, right? If I'm looking at the whole cycle, the data platforms, it's very early stages when you have one single integrated data platform, which actually helps you to do all different types of data, whether it is structured, semi-structured, unstructured, the metadata catalogs, the data catalogs, like, just for the sake of an example, again, I don't want to come across as biased to any of my vendor, that I work for. So pardon me if anybody of you are listening, but just for the sake of an example, if you have Watson data knowledge data catalog, right? So, or, from any other company, that metadata needs to be updated, not just only at the time of when the data is being brought in for training, but even in the end of the life cycle, if there's some data was reused or, how it was kind of, brought back in terms of the lineage, all that needs to be updated. Very few products today actually have that entire life cycle data catalog update, right? Secondly, there are some tools available in order to help you with, there's a lot of advancement in the training and the tuning side of it. I would not worry about that part of it. There are solutions from whether it is from AWS or Microsoft, or whether it is Google, or whether it is IBM, or the data robots, or the, the SaaS, the Clouderas, there's a whole bunch of, open text, everyone, SAP, everyone has that solution. But the areas where we are seeing a little bit of a gap, because we all know coming in this industry, there was a time when it took for DevOps to kind of mature in the industry, both from a principal perspective, but also today, the deployment tools, and I just published a paper, so how do you do the model management? So you actually have it from IBM has a solution in this, Microsoft has a solution, Google has a solution, AWS, IBM, Microsoft, all of them. DataRobot has, HPE has a model ops solution. They're all kind of looking into to do the, so some of them do things like, you could do it from across the container world. You could work across different models. Some businesses might decide to do for certain use cases, certain projects, build models on one particular platform, get some models from the other model. So some of these tools just work for their own models. Some of them work for across the different platforms. Some of them work only, there are very few who work across, whether it is on premises or on a public cloud or on a hybrid and a multi-cloud, some of them don't work. So the whole model registry, model validation, whether it works for only some set of, models, does it work for everyone? Does it well integrate with, GitHub and Jira and all the existing practices? There's also, apart from the technology perspective, the maturity of the enterprises, in terms of what roles is needed, who has what role, how do they kind of cooperate. So I can go on and on, but it is. And then on the right-hand side, on the data drift, concept drift, again, there are very limited set of tools, but it is happening. There's a lot more to be done in that space.
Yeah. I also know of some maybe smaller companies like C3.ai and Alteryx that are sort of working in this space of providing full automated solutions from data gathering to deployment.
Yeah, and they also have some, a lot of these what is the end goal? It's not just about the model development, right? But also integration with applications. So a lot of these things, platforms will also support building of the AI applications. And how do you kind of deploy them? But the most important thing, which will be crucial, and I have to stress this again and again, how do you give the tools and technologies for the AI governance to happen in a meaningful fashion? Without that, customers, enterprises will not be comfortable in deploying it at scale because there's a huge amount of AI ML business risks associated, which I just talked about. And I've done some extensive amount of research as well. So the thing is to get the technical and the business value out of it, but it's also to kind of, make sure that the tools are there for governance.
Yeah. And this is a perfect segue for other questions that we had on scaling and monitoring. Let me see if I can find it. So we want to know more about, how are models deployed at scale and how are they monitored? And what processes can organizations put in place to ensure the quality of a model that has been deployed?
Yeah, so there are one things, today what is happening in most of the enterprises, people are building off their own one-off open source tools, which cannot scale in terms of, looking into the enterprise. Enterprises need the whole, you remember I was talking about the foundational elements of trust that needs to have the security aspects of it. It is not tampered, the platform that you're using to build onto it. It's actually kind of, monitored through same set of principles that these are my KPIs, these are the things that I'm going to monitor and validate, what are my business rules. The tools are not consistent. People are building up, one-off tools right now using their thing, which cannot be scale in terms of managing thousands and thousands of models spread across different deployment locations. So there are some tools evolving, and I keep mentioning the same names, and also, some of the startups who basically doing some model op is one of them, which is doing a very nice job there from a startup world, from SaaS is doing from, an enterprise world. IBM has some great solutions. Microsoft has some great solutions. Google, AWS, they all, DataRobot has some great solutions. But again, how do you kind of, put right from registering every model, whether regardless of whether it is being developed on a Jupyter notebook or whether it is developed on a third-party public cloud platform or whether it is done in your platform, how do you have this consolidated view? How do you have your business rules and make sure that they're being validated against those business things that, how do you kind of, make them with the data scientists self-service self-service is very important, and not really kind of go ahead and depend on IT every time to push this into. How can they actually do their own assessment and do the validation? This is good enough, and these are the results. What are the what if analysis, and I can deploy that. So those tools are being built, and I've covered them in details in one of my research.
Thank you. And can you tell us more about like what KPIs could be useful like in this space, or to track some of these problems?
Yeah. So some simple things is like the fairness, the accuracy. These are more from the working side of it, and then from the outcome side of it, right? I mean, what was the business outcome in terms of whether it was customer satisfaction, what was the goal that the business was driving against it, whether, it's early stages, but could you just go ahead and check whether that, whatever metric that you had, it should not go in the reverse direction, right? Customer experience or customer satisfaction, if you had a goal of improving, and what were your goals of measuring, whether it was, say, I'm just going to make it up on the fly here, that, if it was improvement in your NPS scores, or improvement in your faster closing or tracking of your contact center issues resolution, or if it was a faster amount of, shorter time to get a response to a particular, issue. What is the time duration for resolving the issue? So based upon all those business metrics, customers are actually setting up their KPIs around it, and they're validating against that, but if I have successfully deployed this model, how are they reacting to those, metrics, or measuring against those metrics? But at the same time, during the life cycle, when you're doing it, what percentage of your models were, you set up your threshold of accuracy, what percentage of the models you were able to kind of, take the corrective action. Like we all have read that, during COVID, a lot of the models became null and void because, they were trained on a data set which was not foreseen for this. How agile you were in terms of, doing the dynamic data and concept drift. How agile. So there's, there's a lot of, metrics around that, but yeah.
Yeah. And to close off the scalability topic, what are some of the challenges that we should keep in mind if you are a product manager in this space, because you might have different challenges when you're doing machine learning operations just in your own computer with your own data set, which are very different from going to an enterprise level. What are some of those challenges when you do the jump?
So the number one challenge is the enterprise endorsement and readiness from top to down. A lot of times when people build all these engineering, it may sound like a bit odd saying this, but a lot of times it's not about building a best of the product, but making sure that your entire company is ready for that, whether it is support, whether it is your marketing, whether it is your sales. If you build, but if your sales doesn't know how to kind of articulate the value proposition of that, right? If you build and your support people do not know how to support it, you do not know how to kind of do their partner integration. Your partners don't know how to, because if suppose your model is to actually go to market and scale it through partner, is it intuitive and easy enough for your partner to kind of take it to the market and scale it, right? So all that. So I'll boil it down to the bigger picture, that the enterprise readiness from your end-to-end soup to nuts operations of your business is important. Don't think that you have built an engineering castle and you can scale it realize it at scale without checking your, do's and don'ts in all the area. The whole enterprise needs to be ready for that. Even from marketing, your pricing, your, you really need to think about how are you going to price, how are you going to, integrate, how are you going to train your partners, how are you going to kind of, build the solution. What are you going to do to meet the skill set challenges? So all that, needs to be.
This is interesting. What are your thoughts on the AI role in audits going forward?
So, I keep saying this, that customers do not have a choice, to sit back and think that because there is I'm going to answer this question in an interesting fashion. I was recently doing one of the podcasts with something which was targeted towards the CMOs, and they were asking me this question, that in the 2018, if I'm not mistaken, the shareholder reports, a large amount of enterprises noted AI ML as one of the top risks. So what do the businesses do in this situation, right? I mean, while the shareholders are concerned about the risk and the negative backlash, but at the other side, if you do not do it, I've shown it to you that because of these solutions, you're more resilient, you're more, you can accelerate innovation, you can improve your customer experience, you can improve your employee experience, you can have higher agility. So it's a catch-22, right? So my suggestion to all the folks that I work with is that build those ground rules and ground governance principles from the get-go. Don't wait after you have deployed a few models. So I'll give you a quick high-level overview of that, but we can go into details in the future sessions if need be. We basically say that you need to put together your AI governance model. And what does that mean? Dependent on the country that you operate on, dependent upon your own company ethics, right? It could be one is the company, one is the industry that you work on, your own company core of ethics. So build together. It's a consortium of typically the chief data officer, the chief trust officer, the compliance officers. They all come together. They form their own code of ethics. For that company, each company needs to have their own AI code of ethics. Who will be held responsible if something goes wrong? Is it the CEO? Is it the CTO? Is it the product manager? Is it the developer? Who will respond? So I don't want to scare that something goes wrong, but we all human beings, we all organizations, we can make mistakes. So the due diligence, if you have this consortium, you found your own code of ethics, you put together the governance process, if you put together that, that every stage of the cycle, every persona will be responsible, there needs to be instilled a societal and ethical framework of working for every employee in the organization. They all need to understand AI. It's not a choice. Everybody needs to understand what are the societal and, legal, to impacts to it. And then they have to kind of go through this, that I showed you that in the entire life cycle, data architects have a responsibility. Data engineers have a responsibility. Are they using the right set of tools to kind of make sure that, the right mitigation things would stop? If they are the data, the people who are deploying, who are responsible for providing the infrastructure, they must make sure that the platform on which the tools are being deployed or built, they're safe, they're secure from tampering, they cannot be avoided. And then last but not the least, right through your whole life cycle, you should actually go ahead and see that the right mitigation is done at the right time. You catch the issue much before it goes there. So audit will happen, it will always happen, and we'll get to that maturity. But if you have the right, checks and balances in place right from the get-go, you will have potentially mitigated those risks ahead of time.
Right. Thank you so much. We do have a few other questions, but we are unfortunately way over time. So we will try to get back to the questions offline. I really want to thank Ritu for the presentation. I personally really enjoyed it, and thank you so much for the answer to all the questions. This was very great. And I also want to remind everyone that we are going to be sharing the slides, but as Ritu mentioned, if you are going to use any information presented on those slides, you need to seek permission from Ritu and her company, IDC. With that, thank you so much for joining us, and have a great weekend, everyone.
Thank you. That was a real pleasure. Bye.
Thank you all.